here we are. So we're on the water of Leith. So this is a river that runs through Edinburgh. It was a very industrial river. It was used, there was lots and lots of mills. Oh, there's, you see the ducks. So it's been used for centuries for its power, to power mills. So we've had lots of different mills along the water of Leith. But what we're going to be looking at today is the Dean village. And it was mainly flour. So we're just going to come round and start heading down. Now the water of Leith is about 22 miles long. I think that's about 35 kilometres. I lived at Slateford as a child, so up behind me where we were just looking, I have played in the water of Leith as a child. I think everyone has, to be fair, that comes from Edinburgh. Oh, look at the reflection, isn't this beautiful? Now the water is looking really dark. It's always got a kind of brown hue to it anyway because of the peat. It dyes the water that kind of brown colour. But we have had a lot of rainfall, so it's actually quite high at the moment as well. But this is good. When it's a kind of milky brown, that means all the silt and everything's getting churned up from the bottom. So that's usually not the best sign. Now there's lots of wildlife here. We were listening. I was hoping you could hear the bird song as we were just standing waiting to start. But we've got ducks, we've got otters, moorhens, trout, all sorts of things that you would expect in a river. So this is fresh water. And the water of Leith flows from sort of the Pentland Hills, a spring there, near there, all the way out to our port in Leith. So yeah, I have a Leith tour, and that's where we start, at the water of Leith. So yeah. Now in this area there was about 70 odd mills at one point, all powered by the water of Leith. And we're just going to see, this is one of the weirs just in front of us here, the Dam Head Weir. But I'm just going to let you see, we've not got any snowdrops left that I can see, but we are starting to get the daffodils. So they're not quite ready, they're not quite flowering yet, but we have got some daffodils and a couple of little snowdrops up the hill there. So it's lovely to see nature coming back and doing her thing. Now it is quite noisy at this section, so once I start to come down, I'm not going to say anything until I get to the bottom, just because the power of the water is quite loud. Right. Oh, it's looking beautiful. And that's a little black ladybird. How cool is that? Nature. So this is just gorgeous because the sun is shining. And this is one of the weirs that was here. I'll show you the other one when we get to the other end of the village. As you can see, the wall here is man-made. I'm just going to quickly let you see him. He stopped moving. Oh, he started moving again. So yeah, and it was to channel the water so we could get more power out of it. It is still very high, but as we're looking down, you can start to see this little gravelly area here. Normally you can get down and stand on there, but because we've had so much water coming out of the skies lately, the river's really high. But again, you can see the wall, sort of the retaining wall here, and then you have houses above. We are actually in a valley, and once we get further round, you'll really be able to see that. Now, the water of Leith doesn't normally flood, but it has flooded recently, much to my horror. But that's another story. I'll tell you when we get there. Now, it's a really lovely place to walk along, because half the time you don't even realise you're in a city. Here we can see it, we can see the houses, but there's parts of the water of Leith where you think you're in the wilds. I don't know if you can hear the birds, but they're absolutely lovely. So yeah, now just ahead of us, that's the Dean Village. The yellow buildings, that's the Hawthorn Bank buildings. But there's a lovely little pedestrian bridge just in front of us. It dates back to the end of the 1800s, and it's been closed for a couple of years, but it finally got the finances to restore it. So the metalwork's all been sorted out, and the wooden decking has been put back down. They've put new decking in, so it should last us another 100 years hopefully. Now, where the bridge is basically where the original ford for the river was. So the original shallow point for crossing was just under where the bridge is. So if you were coming from Edinburgh and going to South Queensferry, you would come down into the Dean Village, cross the river, the water of Leith here, and then go back up Dean Path the other side, which I'll show you in a little while. Where is the sun? It's quite bright. Now, I said that there was a flood. It flooded a couple of weeks back. So to the second line of stonework just here, so you've got one row, two rows, it was flooded to here. And I had to wade through it on a tour, which was a very interesting experience, shall we say. Something I never thought I would do as an adult, go paddling in the water of Leith. Now, as we look at the river here, I've actually, in the summertime when I've done this tour, I'm going to bring my finger in again, I've actually walked all the way over to here, because this part is usually dry. So it's just to let you see, to get the idea of how much water we've got going on here. Now I'm going to take us up onto the bridge so you can maybe try and get some nice postcards. This is Well Court, and we're going to have a look at that in a moment once we've been onto the bridge. Now you can see it's quite steep here getting up. These are sets. A lot of people call them cobbles, but they're man-shaped, so they're kind of brick-like. Volcanic material, basalt, dolerite. So yeah, they can be very slippy when it's wet, so just bear that in mind. Right, let's see if we can get this. There's a shadow of the building. We'll stand there and hopefully the sun won't get in the way of the pictures. There. Okay, so we'll just swing round. Isn't that gorgeous? So as we look down here, there's actually a tuft of grass in the distance there, and there's actually a sort of a trench type thing which condensed the water for the mills as well. In the Dean Village area, at least 70 mills going along here, down towards Stockbridge. Now the Hawthorn Bank buildings, these yellow ones, these are from the end of the 1800s. They look older, but they're not. But then next door, the white buildings are 1980s. And I love the way that they've kind of had a little nod to their neighbours. So if you look at the apex, you can see there's wooden details. So it's kind of having a little nod to next door. For 1980s architecture, I think it's quite nice. The fact they thought about the surrounding buildings and the history of the area as well. Now, Well Court. Isn't that beautiful? There's their private garden. So they actually, where the tree is and the shrubs, that's the private garden for the residents of Well Court. It's a beautiful building. So we'll just head back down. Right. It's so nice, the sun's out. let's hope that's a sign of things to come, and we're going to have a really nice summer. That would be fantastic. Now, over on the left here, where we've got these new 1980s buildings, which are basically boxes, they're not pretty at all. There had been a tannery, there had been a brewery, and lots of mills. The last mill in the Dean was grinding wood flour for linoleum, and it closed down in the 1970s because there wasn't adequate ventilation and there was a lot of dust in the air, and it basically caught and there was an explosion which ended the mill. So that was the last mill. Now here you can see it says dam side, so we're looking at the dam head weir there, and you can see you've got all this 1980s architecture where there was mills. There had actually been a tannery at the side of the Norloch in the heart of the city, and it moved to the Dean village. Now here, as we look up, you can see these are from the 1880s, kind of the same idea as Well Court, in that it's got the highlighting with the red sandstone. The round tower bit in the middle, his fingers coming in here, this thing, that's the staircase, the spiral staircase, which is what you see in lots of places. No lifts in these buildings. Now, Well Court itself is beautiful. You can see the date stone, 1884. I'll just come over and stop so you can get you want to get a postcard of it there. Oh look, you've got the reflection of the building behind in the windows, that's so nice. So it's John Ritchie Finlayson. He was the proprietor of the Scotsman newspaper. He was a philanthropist. He lived above the village, and he could see that the village was squalid conditions, really run down, and he decided he wanted to do something about it for the working class. So he actually he built Well Court. He hired an architect and he built Well Court for the workers. Very strict rules though, you know, you had to be home by a certain time. The rent was between £7 and £12. What was quite advanced for the time was the fact that they had indoor plumbing. So they had a toilet, a convenience in their actual flat. They didn't have to go out and share the one on the landing or indeed in the garden. Now the stair here, number 19 to 30, you can see it's open all the way up. So it's got a good fresh air supply. Very arts and crafts. Well Court. Now there were strict rules. You weren't allowed to come home drunk. Oh, look at the flowers, isn't they gorgeous? You couldn't come home drunk. There was a factor who looked after the area and the buildings and the tenants. So the factor's office is actually where this tower is. So you've got the clock tower, so you always know what time it is. On the ground floor was the factor's office and his accommodation, and upstairs there's a hall, and the hall would be used for reading, education, parties, weddings, that type of thing, and then on a Sunday it was used for church. It was used for a church, but there was 3 different ministers that would come in, so there's 3 different congregations. So it's a very well thought out, well planned area here. So yes, the door's open. And then just round here is the private garden for the residents. So that's what we were looking at when we were standing on the bridge. We were looking there. So there's a lovely bench and things. Now, just above the door, you can see some of the detail. You've got 1884. And then as we come round, you can see some of the rooftops. Now, the World Heritage Fund actually helped with the restoration, and it was a very sympathetic restoration. It was only if something needed fixed that they did it. So you can see all these little windows, the little panes of glass still survive. This is how it was originally, whereas a lot of places they would take these windows out and put in new double glazing, that kind of thing. Now this is a communal drying green. So if you don't have space inside your property, you could come out and you could hang your washing here. Most of the tenements in Edinburgh and all over Scotland have communal drying greens for that purpose. So yeah, now the Scotsman newspaper was the biggest newspaper in Scotland because it was the first newspaper to publish the football results on the day that they happened. And that is because they took pigeons to the football matches and then sent the results home by pigeon. So it's strange to think that pigeons made a newspaper. Oh, I'm just going to show you the cat having a little sunbathe there, sitting right next to an owl. Isn't that cute? I don't know if you can see it. Oh. So as we look at this, I'm just going to show you the World Heritage. There's a little plaque here, just here. So Well Court was built 1886 by John Ritchie Finlay, who was the proprietor of the Scotsman newspaper, to provide good quality housing for local people. And the architect was Arthur George Sidney Mitchell. Now, as we look at Well Court, the colour, this sandstone here, this creamy colour, that is typical of Edinburgh. Our sandstone is a creamy colour through to honey or a grey. So that's the local sandstone that we have. If you want red sandstone, which is what we have here, and all the detail, and there's a lot of it here, this has to come from the west coast. We're on the east. So by using red sandstone, it's actually really expensive because you had to transport it quite a way. But Finlay didn't care. He used red sandstone. And when you see the Scottish National Portrait Gallery, he actually paid for that as well. And it's all red sandstone. So even though this is for workers, he actually cares about the people that are going to live there. And he's giving them something good quality, if you know what I mean. He's actually spent money on it and put thought into it, which a lot of people at that point in time, when it came to housing for the poor or the working class, they weren't really interested. Now, just here, this is the playground, but we have 3 millstones. So these were used by the mills for grinding to make flour and things. So it is a play park. I'll just let you see. So it's a tiny little play park. Now, it was originally the playground or the schoolyard for this building here, which I'll tell you about in a little while. That's the old Victorian school. But I just want to take you round a corner and just let you have a look up Dean Path. So as we look up, this is the way out of the village originally. So you would cross at the ford, then you would come the way we've just come and go up Dean Path. Now, originally the Dean village was on Dean Path, and behind me was actually the Water of Leith village, but it was very confusing for people. So eventually they just took the name over and it got called the Dean village. So we've got buildings here, so 1700s where the 2 bins are, just here. Next door we've got 1960s, which is built on the site of an 1880s building, which was built on the drying green for that building, the old 1700s one. And then here we've got another building from the sort of 1700s. And then we've got 1960s built on what was their green space, their drying green. And then just over here, that's the West Mill. So that's the most complete mill we've got, although this has now been turned into accommodation, but it's still pretty much, you can tell exactly what it is or what it was. So you can see the sign, Dam Side. And then we have this Victorian school, which was built in 1875, and it was for the children in the area. But by 1960 there wasn't enough children, so the school was actually shut down, and now it is, as you can see, a residential apartments. So this is the school, and across the road where that white tree is, that was the schoolyard, the playground. Right, now hopefully you'll be able to see it. As we look up, you can see there's a wheat sheaf just there, and it's got 1805. Now the West Mill has been on this site since the 1500s, but it was remodelled in the 1800s. Then as we look at the school building, you can see a roundel with a woman and child. That's St Margaret, Queen Margaret. She's on all the Victorian schools. So we may not have a lot of statues of women, but we have roundels like this of St Margaret on every single school, Victorian school in Edinburgh. So she's very well represented. More roundels of her than statues of men, probably. Now, she's important to Scotland. She's Scotland's only royal female saint. She died in 1093 at Edinburgh Castle, and then she was taken to Dunfermline, and she was actually brought through the village, over the ford, and then up Dean Path to take her to Dunfermline for burial. Now, the bridge that we're looking at here, this bridge was built in the 1675 by the Baxters of Edinburgh. Now, here, unfortunately, the sun is so bright. Here we have the toll booth of the Baxters, the town hall, the grain store, the committee rooms, wherever the important things would happen is here, and this was built in 1675. Now, the Baxters of Edinburgh were one of the most important trade guilds we had at the time. There's been records of milling in the water of Leith, in the Dean village, water of Leith, since the 1100s, when David the First, who was the son of St Margaret, she had several sons that became king, but anyway, he's the one that built a lot of the border abbeys. He actually gifted one of his mills at the water of Leith to the monks at Holyrood, so where Holyrood Palace is today. So here you can actually see that channel. The last time I did this, because the water was so high we couldn't see it, but we can see the channel where they would channel the water in and then take it into the mills to power the wheels. So the Dean Village water of Leith was the bread basket of Edinburgh. This is where all the flour was made, all the bread. Well, not all the bread, but a lot of the bread. And they also made pies and things here as well. This building just coming into view is the oldest house. Dates back to the late 1600s. You can see the windows are quite small, but as fashions change, once you get into the 1700s, glass becomes more affordable. Windows become bigger, so you then alter the state of your windows, so you end up having these big windows at the front. So just like you see, you can, where they've made the windows bigger. And you can see this little sort of cutout on the buildings, the corners, and this is because when horses and carts and things were going past, it wouldn't damage the building. If you've got this cutout, there's no sharp corner for you to knock into and damage the building. And there we have a turnpike staircase. So spiral staircases, very important defensively. They were used because they cancel numbers. You can only get one person with a sword up at a time, so it was easy to defend your home. Oh, look at the daffodils. Isn't that gorgeous? You should see this in the summertime. This lady is so good with her plants. She's got it down to a fine art. Right, I'm just going to wait for this man to pass, and then I should be able to hopefully let you see the Hawthorn Bank buildings from this side. Now, as we look at them, these yellow buildings, they only look about 2-3 stories high. But if you're to go around the back of the building, there's a story underneath as well.
Yeah.
There you go.
No, absolutely. I'll climb up.
I'm hoping you can fit that in.
And then I'll get back to you.
There you go. And then from here, you're getting a lovely view of Well Court again in the clock tower. So no excuse for coming home late. And there's the little pedestrian bridge that we were on earlier. And you can see 2 chimneys above the trees. Sort of left, just a wee bit left of centre of the screen, there's 2 chimneys above the trees, and that's one of the modern art galleries. So it's not a long walk to get from there to here, or vice versa. Right, I'm just going to take us back pretty, these flowers. Gorgeous. I'm not sure what they are though, but they're very pretty. Right.
Make the decision. Yeah.
Now the colouring that you can see on the building, this is lime wash. Lime wash would be whatever colour pigment you could afford. Whatever you like, that's what colour your building would be. So you'll see yellows, oranges, pinks, reds. And just so you get the idea, we are definitely in a valley. There's some steps taking you up, and there's still a hill to climb after that. Right. And then we've got some beautiful detail. They're lost. Oh, what a shame. Now, this is Bellsbrae, just running up the hill. So if you were coming from Princess Street, you would just walk towards the Dean Bridge, which we'll see in a minute, and you just walk down Bellsbrae. Now, here we have the original entrance. There's a window above it, but you've got this roundel, and in it you can see two crossed peels. The one on the left has two pies. Originally it was two loaves of bread, and originally it was 3 loaves of bread, but one's fallen off. And then the one on the right actually has a pie with a hole in the middle to let the steam out, and you've got angels, you've got a wheat sheaf that's broken at the top there, and then you have the lintel above the door with the religious inscription. God bless the Baxters of Edinburgh, who built this house in 1675. But the original entrance, as you can see, has been blocked up over time, and this is now accommodation, so several flats within this structure. But it's good that it survived. Now, just going to take us over to have a little look at the side of the mill, the West Mill, because you can still see that it was a mill. As we look down, you see the two openings there, so the water would flow in through the building and come out at the other side of the building, and this would power the machinery inside the West Mill. And just where we are, this is where the Lindsay Mill was, and the Lindsay Mill's been here since the 1500s as well. And we've got a couple of bits of carving that they've saved. If anybody was interested, there's an audio guide for the entire length of the Water of Leith, so that's maybe something if you're interested, if you're visiting. Right, but here again we have the crossed peels of the Baxters. That's the sort of emblem, and you can see the bread on them. So that's from the Lindsay Mill. And then just here we've got a really worn lintel which was above a door, and this says, "Blessed be the Lord for all his gifts," or "Blessed be God for all his gifts." 15, but the rest of the date is missing. So that was originally above the door. Now, where these sort of modern houses are, these were offices, there's car parks and all, and now it's accommodation at the top there. This is where Jericho stood, and Jericho was a 6-storey grain storage building. It was huge. So you can imagine it would have been like being in a sort of a canyon almost. Now the church that's just in front of us, this was an Episcopalian church. It is now a Christian centre. So it's no longer an Episcopalian church. But we're hearing the weir now. I'm just going to take us down where we can get a better view of it. And this is the World's End weir. Oh, look at the dog, isn't he gorgeous? So, and the bridge that's just coming into view, that is the Dean Bridge. It's about 106 feet from the top to the bottom, and you can see the bus going over the top. The parapet is actually really high, and I'll explain that in a little while. I'm just going to bring us round here, try not to stand in anything yucky. So just where the grass is in the corner, you can see one of the openings where the water would come back out of the West Mill. So it went in at the side and comes out there. Love the daffodils. And then just over here we have the World's End Weir. So this was the biggest one. It had a mill lade at head height that would carry water from here down towards Stockbridge and would power the mills on the way to Stockbridge as well. But unfortunately, in the middle of the 1800s, there was a landslide and it wiped out the mill lade, and that was really the beginning of the end. So that's quite nice. You've got the millstones, the bridge, and the church. The Dean village, they never actually embraced steam power, and the problem was Leith, which is at the bottom end of the river. They embraced steam power. They had much bigger capacity for making flour, and it eventually sort of killed the industry here. And then you had the mill lade dying as well. So the problem, I think they had been at the top of their game for so long. When the steam power came in, they just didn't realise that how important it would be. Now this is a couple of the millstones from the Lindsay mill. Originally we used local stone for our millstones, but once you start to import grain, it's very, very hard because it's had time to dry out as it comes across to us, and it was wearing out the stones too quickly. So we then had to import millstones from France. So this is very hard and very heavy rock. But as you look at it, you can just make out the stripes. You've got these grooves, and that was to help it spin out. So you can still see them on this. Now it is segmented like an orange because the stone is so heavy. They would actually bring it in pieces like this, put it back together and put an iron band around it to hold it together whilst it was being used. So we're quite lucky that they've still actually kept them. Now there was also mills here and further along. So this would have been like a massive, really dark canyon. And unfortunately the water of Leith in the sort of 1800s, 1800s was basically an open sewer. Because when they started to put the sewage system in the 1800s, the Victorian period, they put the sewage into the river to flow out at the water of Leith into the sea, not realising how dangerous that was for health. So you're grinding flour and things with raw sewage just doesn't even bear thinking about. So yeah, fortunately that's stopped now. Now this little building in front of us, this is Scots Baronial. Scots Baronial architecture is always a favourite. It always comes back. It's actually from the sort of the 1916 or something, round about that period, so it's not that old, this building. But it's sitting on the site of an earlier mill, which was 6 stories high. So as we look at the bridge, just above it you can see there's a house. So that's the height that the mill was at. Absolutely huge. Now the bridge is designed by Thomas Telford, and has hollow legs, so somebody has to inspect them every year. It's 106 feet. Now the parapet is very high because in the middle, well, at the beginning of the 1900s, people were having a particularly rough time, and a lot of people were ending their days here. So to make it more difficult, they made the parapet higher, which also means that when you walk along this bridge, you don't realise there's something really interesting below you, because you can't see into the Dean. Unless you're quite tall, you can't really see into it. So yeah, it's a shame. But when that bridge was built, it really cut the need for the Dean village, because you no longer needed to use their bridge. And the point about the bridge when the Baxters built it was that it gave them passing trade. You know, people had to use that bridge to get across this river, so they had passing trade all the time. But when this bridge was built, that took that away as well. So it was like the kiss of death. Now, when the builder was building the bridge, he actually completed it early, and he asked if he would be given a bonus for completing the bridge early, and he was told no. So he didn't hand the bridge over. He actually kept hold of the bridge until its official date for handover, and he charged people money to walk across it, to be the first people to cross the bridge. So I like his style. So you can see that it's quite a drop. And then as we look down here, the water of Leith's fantastic because we've got lots of artwork. And just here on the rock, you can see an otter. So sort of in the middle of the screen there's water running round the rock on either side, and there's a little otter. So we've got all sorts of artwork here, if you're interested in that kind of thing. Now, if you were to walk ahead, if you were to follow the road on, the path onwards, it would take you to Stockbridge. And there were several mills along this section as well. Now, the Dean, it was originally spelled D-E-N-E, and over time it's changed to D-E-A-N. But yeah, it's still a beautiful place. And as we're standing here, you can hear the birds. It's just lovely. You could easily forget you were in the heart of a city. To get to Princes Street from here is about a 10-minute walk. It's not far at all. And this is part of the World Heritage Site. So the old town and the new town, and then there's this little loop that brings in the Dean Village and the Dean Cemetery into the World Heritage Site. Right, any questions? I'm going to press that button again. Have you got any questions? See, that's the funny thing about this. Because you don't know if people are there or not, you could have been spending half an hour talking to yourself. Because it's there's no way for us to know who's there. And it's really weird. You get to the end and it's like, oh, is there anyone there? Thank you, Claire. I think it was just, oh no, there's two of us. Right, there's definitely. Because it's such a beautiful day. What we should have done was brought a picnic. Just sat down somewhere and listened to the water and the birds. It would have been good. You're there, you're just being shy and quiet. Yes, from when it was remodelled so 1805, yeah. I know, the Dean Villages, it's a beautiful place, and a lot of people don't realise how easy it is to get here. There's no public transport, so you never get the big coaches down here, so it's quite nice, but you can walk down if you're okay going downhill and then get a taxi back. It's a lovely place to be. And like I say, if you're walking that way behind me, when you get to Stockbridge, there's lots of places to get something to eat, nice little shops and all that kind of thing, so you can almost make a kind of day of it, Yeah, the Dean Village is quite an expensive place. I mean, there was a studio flat, which is basically your bedroom is your sitting room, with a small bathroom and a little kitchenette, so tiny, and that was for rent £750 a month. So that kind of gives you an idea. It's not cheap, but it is a beautiful place, and you can escape really quickly into the wildlife because you've got all this around you. And then on the other side, you've got the back of Ann Street and things, and they've got private gardens that are looking onto the water of Leith as well. So it is easy to kind of lose yourself in nature here. I think we're very, very lucky. And a lot of people don't realise how many green spaces we have in Edinburgh. We've just hidden them well. Right, any other questions before I let you go? Oh, Nat, we're just about finished. Yeah, honestly, Bellsbury, that road that I just showed you at the end there, once you get to the top of that, you're at the end of Dean Bridge and you can actually see the castle. So Princes Street is literally 5 minutes. So it's amazing how central it is, but people just don't realise it's here or how easy it is to get to. Ooh, actually, I'm going to turn you around for a second. Isn't that pretty? So I mean, it is lovely. Oh, thank you. Well, it is, and it's like stepping back in time. You can easily forget where you are. Right, I'm going to let you go because you've probably got other things to do, other tours. Right, thanks everyone. And I'm doing Stirling this evening. I think it's 6 o'clock my time. So if you fancy seeing Stirling Old Town and you've not seen it before, pop along and see that with me this evening. You got up 2 hours early. Oh no. Oh, I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it. Right, thank you everyone. Right, bye.